Darren adjusted the collar of his jacket as he stood before the massive gilded doors of the Zenithian throne room. His pulse was steady, but there was an itch of unease at the back of his mind. He'd been summoned here personally by Queen Zvanna herself, and in his experience nothing good ever came from a meeting where royalty demanded a private audience. The guards flanking him, towering Zenithian warriors clad in shimmering obsidian armor, didn't say a word. Their elongated, almost feline faces remained impassive, their piercing violet eyes watching him with detached curiosity. They were taller than him, most aliens were, but he had long since learned that size didn't mean much when you had a stubborn human survival instinct. The doors parted with a deep, resonant hum, revealing the opulent throne room. The walls were constructed of some strange metallic material that pulsed with faint blue veins of energy. Strange floating lifts swirled near the ceiling, shifting in hypnotic patterns, as if they were alive. And there at the far end, seated on an elevated throne, carved from what looked like a single piece of radiant black crystal, was Queen Zvanna. She was breathtaking in the way only an alien monarch could be. Zenithian were renowned for their unnerving beauty, and she was the pinnacle of it. Her obsidian black skin shimmered like polished stone. Under the throne room's ethereal glow, twinner ran along her cheekbones, adding an air of regality to her sharp, commanding face. Her piercing gold eyes locked onto him with an intensity that sent a strange chill down his spine. Darren wasn't sure if it was attraction or survival instincts kicking in, maybe both. Beside her, lounging in an elegant yet far too relaxed posture, was another Zenithian woman. This one was different. Nyara. She lacked the queen's aura of authority, but her expression was one of playful mischief. Her violet-tinted skin gleamed under the chamber's light, and her silver hair cascaded down her back in soft waves. She regarded him with a smirk, sharp canines just barely visible. As she tilted her head, he hated that smirk already. The air between them was heavy, expectant. The silence stretched until Darren, with no better option, decided to break it. "First, Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly enough to show respect without looking subservient. "You summon me." Zvanna leaned forward, resting her chin against the back of her hand as she studied him, a slow, deliberate blink, her expression unreadable. Then finally she spoke, her voice smooth, but carrying an underlying weight of command. "You are the human warrior known as Darren, are you not?" He nodded. "That's me." Her golden eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Good. Then you will answer a question for me." Dar shifted slightly, his muscles tensing. "I'll answer if I can." Zvanna gestured lazily with her fingers. "It has come to my attention that humans are uniquely adaptable." Darren frowned. "I suppose we are." "Is it true?" she continued, voice steady. "That humans can do it in any position." The words hung in the air like a charged storm. Darren blinked, his mind slammed into a metaphorical wall as he processed what had just been said. Surely he had misheard that. He straightened, clearing his throat. "I'm going to need some clarification on what it is, Your Majesty." Nyara let out a small, delighted chuckle. "Oh, this is already going better than I expected." Zvanna's head tilted slightly, her expression still unreadable, but now with a hint of something else. "Curiosity, perhaps." "I am referring to mating." Darren's stomach dropped. "You mean sex?" he alerted before he could stop himself. Nyara grinned. "Oh, I like this one." Zvanna nodded, ignoring Nyara's amusement. "Yes, the rumors say humans are highly adaptable, that their stamina, endurance, and ability to mate in any position is unlike any other species in the known systems." Darren's mouth opened and closed. He had no idea how to navigate this conversation. He had been summoned here across the stars for this. He let out a slow breath, gathering his thoughts. "Okay. I think there might be some misunderstandings here. Adaptability is part of human nature, yes, but when we talk about endurance or flexibility, we usually mean in survival, combat, or intelligence, not necessarily." Mating. Nixer leaned forward, propping her chin on her hand, her smirk deepening. "Oh, so you deny it?" Darren hesitated. "I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong." But Zvanna raised a hand, silencing him. Her expression remained cool, but her eyes locked onto his with an unsettling intensity. "You speak carefully. That suggests there is some truth to the claims." Darren dragged a hand down his face. "Look, I don't know what kind of rumors you've been hearing," but Zvanna leaned back in her throne. The Zenithian race prides itself on strength and dominance in all aspects of life, including mating rituals. I must determine if humans possess superior qualities. Naira grinned. She means she wants you to prove it. Darian snapped his head toward her. That's not what I heard. Nixer merely shrugged. Well, Your Majesty, if he isn't willing, we could always find another human. I didn't say I was unwilling. Duran quickly corrected panic. Rising, he turned back to Zvana, struggling to regain some sense of control over the conversation. I just think maybe there are more diplomatic ways to establish interspecies relations than throwing me into some experimental alien seduction test. Salvana regarded him for a moment longer, then, to his absolute shock, the corner of her lips curved slightly. Not a smile, but close eye. Admire your caution, human, she murmured, but you will participate in this test. Darian exhaled sharply, and if I refuse? The Queen's golden eyes darkened slightly. Then I will assume you are hiding something about your species. Darren clenched his jaw. He hated political games, but in this moment he realized something important. He had just been cornered by a queen who never lost. Nakara stretched lazily. You know, I could help demonstrate if he needs. Zvana silenced her with a single glance. Darian groaned, rubbing his temples. Okay, fine. What exactly does this test involve? Zana's gaze didn't waver. You will undergo a series of trials to determine whether your kind truly possesses the adaptability and endurance that is rumored. If you succeed, then we will discuss future relations. Darian swallowed. He already had a bad feeling about this. Naira clapped her hands together. Oh, this is going to be fun. Darian sighed. Why do I feel like I just got set up? Darian sat stiffly in the great grand chamber, still trying to wrap his head around the absurdity of his current situation. The Queen of the Zenithian Empire had just declared that one human man was to undergo a trial to prove his species' supposed legendary adaptability. In mating, this had to be a joke, but looking at Queen Zana's cool, unreadable expression and Nara's barely contained amusement, Darren knew one thing for sure: they were completely serious. He exhaled slowly, resting his elbows on his kneesel. Right before I agree to anything, I need to understand exactly what you're asking me to do. Nick Sarah, lounging nearby, grinned at him, her violet-tinted fingers twirling a small metallic object that glowed faintly with Zenithian script. Oh, it's simple, human. The Queen wishes to observe your capabilities. Darian narrowed his eyes. Capabilities? How? Zana's golden eyes locked onto his, piercing and unyielding. I have studied countless species across the known systems. Most races are predictable in their biological limits, but humans, your kind, does not conform to standard expectations. Your physiology allows for endurance beyond reason, adaptability that defies logic, and so I have heard an unparalleled creativity in physical engagements. Darren's face twitched. And by physical engagements you mean? Naira cut in, smirking. Sex, human. She means sex. Darren clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to rub his temples. Right, that's what I thought. He glanced at the Queen. But let me clarify something, Your Majesty. You said I'll undergo a trial. What does that actually mean? Zana's expression remained neutral, though there was a flicker of something in her gaze: curiosity, amusement, or perhaps even challenge. You will be tested in various scenarios meant to measure your adaptability, endurance, and ability to match a Zenithian partner in different positions. Darian blinked. Positions? Nixer chuckled. Oh, this is going to be fun. Darren exhaled sharply. You realize how insane this sounds, right? Svanner remained unfazed. Is it you claim to be adaptable, yet you hesitate when presented with an opportunity to prove it? His eyes narrowed slightly. She was baiting him, testing him before the test even began. Darian leaned back, arms crossed. I'm not hesitating. I'm just making sure I don't walk into something that gets me killed. Nixer let out a soft laugh. Oh, don't worry, you'll be alive when it's over, she smirked. Probably. Darian shot her a glare, not helping. Zana leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharpening. Do you accept? Darian knew he didn't really have a choice. If he refused, he'd likely be thrown into a cell or worse, executed for offending the Queen. And if he accepted, well, that's a problem for future me. He sighed. Fine, but I expect full clarification on what I'm about to walk into. Salvana nodded. Then listen carefully. A soft hum filled the chamber as an unseen mechanism activated. The walls shimmered and holographic images formed in the air around them, strange symbols, shifting diagrams, and what looked like Zenithian anatomical charts. Darian tensed slightly as one particular diagram showed a Zenithian couple in an explicit position. Oh hell. No, Savannah gestured to the projections, her tone as professional as if she were discussing battle tactics rather than interspecies mating. Zenithian are biologically superior in many ways. We are stronger, more agile, and possess enhanced stamina compared to most species. Darren resisted the urge to comment. He knew where this was going, but she continued, there is one flaw in our physiology. Our species evolved with rigid muscle structures, meaning there is very little room for flexibility in our movements. Darren raised an eyebrow. Meaning, Naira smirked, meaning most Zenithian have one position they can manage comfortably too, if they're particularly gifted. She tilted her head. You see the issue, Darian coughed. Yeah, I see the issue. Xana's golden gaze didn't waver. Humans, however, have been described as possessing limitless flexibility. I have observed reports of human warriors adapting to combat styles never before seen. I have read accounts of human endurance outlasting even the strongest of alien fighters, and most intriguing of all, she paused, her gaze flickering over him, there are whispers of humans demonstrating creativity in mating that no other species has achieved. Darren let out a slow breath. And you want me to prove if that's true? Savannah nodded. Once Nixar arrested her chin on her palm. Watching him, I mean, it's a compliment, really. Darren scoffed. Right, because nothing says honor like being drafted into an alien sex experiment. Nixar grinned. Oh, I really like you. Darren turned back to the queen. Okay, fine. But if I do this, I have conditions. Vanna raised an elegant brow. Conditions? He gestured vaguely. First, I'm not doing anything I don't agree to. Second, I'm not putting myself in a situation that could __ or kill me. Third, if this is some elaborate trick to make humans look weak, I walk. Nixar whistled softly. Bold. I really like you. Svana studied him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she gave the smallest nod. Acceptable. Darian exhaled. All right. What first? Svana rose gracefully from her throne. You will begin with a preliminary test, a demonstration of your physical adaptability. If you pass, you will proceed to the main trials. Darren nodded slowly. And if I fail? Nixar grinned. Then you go back to being a normal human. Nobody. Darian rolled his shoulders, cracking his neck. He had no idea what was coming, but he had faced worse odds before. Probably. The doors to the throne room opened, revealing a new chamber beyond, dimly lit with strange floating platforms and shifting gravity zones. Naira patted his shoulder as she passed him. Good luck, human. Salvana simply watched him, her expression unreadable. Darian took a deep breath, stepping forward into the unknown. This was going to be one hell of a test. Darian stepped into the chamber, his boots clicking against the strange metallic flooring as the doors slid shut behind him. The moment they sealed, the air around him shifted. Gravity wavered for a split second before stabilizing, making his stomach churn. He clenched his jaw. Great. They're not even pretending this is going to be easy. From her elevated platform, Queen Zana watched him with the same composed, unreadable expression she had maintained since their first encounter. Naira, however, leaned forward in her seat with barely contained amusement, her silver hair cascading over one shoulder. Darren had no idea what was coming next, but judging by the smug look on Naira's face, it was nothing good. Svana finally spoke, her voice calm yet firm. Before we proceed with the primary evaluation, we must establish your baseline capabilities. This chamber will allow us to test your physical adaptability under varied conditions. Darren exhaled sharply. So what, an obstacle course? Nick Sarah chuckled. Something like that. The moment she spoke, the floor beneath him shifted. The solid metallic ground rippled as though it were liquid, reforming into a series of floating platforms, each at different angles, some spinning, others pulsating with strange blue energy. The gravity flickered again. This time it wasn't stable. Some platforms seemed to have heavier pull, while others felt almost weightless. Darian's muscles tensed. Of course, it's not a simple obstacle course. Svana folded her hands in her lap. The first test is movement adaptability. You will navigate this space and reach the far side. Fail, and the trial ends here. Darren rolled his shoulders, feeling the familiar thrum of adrenaline coursing through him. Right, no pressure. Nixar grinned. "Oh, don't worry, human, if you fall the auto-recovery field will catch you." "Before you completely break your spine," Darren shot her a glare that's so reassuring. Then, without another word, he launched himself forward. The moment his boots left the ground, everything changed. The first platform was relatively stable, but the second spun violently as soon as he landed, forcing him to shift his center of gravity. He crouched low, gripping the edge before pushing off to the next. His muscles adjusted instinctively, relying on pure reflex as he moved. "All right, this isn't so bad." The third platform, however, had almost no gravity. The moment he touched it, his momentum sent him floating upward. He twisted midair, using the motion to propel himself toward another ledge. At the last second, the platform dropped beneath him. A trap. Darren's instinct screamed. Adapt. With a grunt, he threw himself sideways, latching onto a narrow pole-like structure that extended from the wall. The impact jarred his shoulder, but he held firm. From her seat, Nixer let out a low whistle. "Not bad," Darren ignored, focusing on the path ahead. Every move had to be calculated. The Zenithian clearly designed this chamber to be impossible for their own kind, given their rigid physiology, the constantly shifting positions, the sudden shifts in gravity. This was something no Zenithian warrior could navigate, but he could. He adapted. It's what humans did best. Darren kept moving, using momentum to his advantage, his muscles burning with exertion. The final jump loomed ahead, a near impossible gap between two platforms, the last one spinning wildly. He exhaled sharply. Only one way to do this. With a deep breath, he sprinted forward, launching himself at the precise moment the platform spun in his favor. He twisted midair, arms reaching impact. His hand slammed onto the final platform, fingers gripping the edge as his body dangled over the abyss. His heart pounded in his chest, but he held on, pulling himself up with sheer determination. As soon as his boots touched solid ground, the platforms froze in place, the gravity-stabilizing silence. Darren exhaled, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "Well, that was fun." From her throne, Queen Xena finally leaned forward slightly, her golden eyes glinting. "You succeeded," she said, her tone unreadable. Darren smirked. "Did you expect me to fail?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied him for a long moment before finally saying, "You are different from other warriors. I have observed." Nixer grinned. "I told you, Your Majesty, humans are interesting." Darren dusted off his jacket. "Glad I could entertain." Xena rose from her seat, stepping toward the edge of the platform. Even in motion, she exuded an effortless grace that made Darren tense instinctively. She regarded him, her expression contemplative. "That was merely the first test. The true evaluation begins now." Darren crossed his arms. "All right, what's next?" For the first time since their meeting, Xana's lips curved into a small knowing smirk. "You will now be tested with a partner." Darren's stomach dropped. Naira burst into laughter. "Oh, this is where it gets really interesting." Darren groaned. "I hate this test already." The moment Queen Xana uttered the word partner, Darren knew he was in trouble. The chamber around him remained still, the floating platforms locked in place, but the air had shifted, thicker, charged with something he couldn't quite name. His instinct screamed at him that whatever came next would be a far bigger challenge than jumping between precariously balanced death traps. Next her, a stretch lazily, clearly enjoying his discomfort. "Oh, this is going to be fun," she murmured, smashing him a smirk. Darren pinched the bridge of his nose. "Let me guess, this next test is less about movement and more about cooperation." Xana descended the steps of her elevated throne, the golden embroidery of her regal attire catching the strange ambient light of the chamber. As she approached, Darren felt an odd shift in her energy, not quite predatory, but definitely assessing. "You learn quickly," she murmured. Darren exhaled. "Lucky me." She gestured toward the center of the chamber. The floor beneath it shifted again, this time forming what appeared to be a smooth open arena, circular and vast. Unlike before, there were no platforms, no shifting gravity fields, just a clean, empty space that somehow made him even more nervous. "You will now engage in the second phase of the trial," Xana announced. "Humans are said to be exceptional at adjusting to partners, no matter their differences. This test Will measure that claim. Darian narrowed his eyes. And how exactly am I supposed to adjust to a partner in a test like this? Vanner raised a brow as if amused that he hadn't figured it out yet. Simple. You will match the movements of your assigned partner, maintaining synchronization at all times. Nakara let out a mock gasp. Oh, Your Majesty, how scandalous, putting the poor human through such intimate trials. Darren ignored her. His focus remained on Svanna. And who exactly am I supposed to be syncing with? Naira hopped down from her perch, her silver hair gleaming under the chamber's globe. Oh, human, she purred. You're looking at her. Darren felt his brain short-circuit. He blinked. Wait, you? She grinned, surprised. I did say I like you. Darian glanced between her and the Queen. You're telling me the next test involves me and Naira? What? Moving together as in Svanna inclined her head. In Zenithian culture, synchronized movement is a vital aspect of bonding. It is an expression of trust, discipline, and compatibility. Nara stretched her arms behind her head. In other words, we have to move in perfect rhythm every step. Every motion aligned. Darian felt like his soul left his body. He ran a hand down his face. And I assume if I fail to sync properly, I fail the trial. Correct, Zan said smoothly. Nara tilted her head. Of course, failure wouldn't be so terrible. We could always find another human to study, maybe want a little more obedient. Darren's jaw clenched. He hated being baited, but damned if she wasn't good at it. He exhaled sharply. All right, fine, let's get this over with. Naira beamed. That's the spirit. As soon as he stepped onto the open arena, the floor beneath him shimmered a ripple of energy, spreading outward like a pulse. Duran tensed. Then the test began. A rhythmic bass-like vibration echoed through the chamber, and before he could react, Nakara moved. She spun gracefully, her limbs fluid and precise, her body following an intricate, almost dance-like pattern. The movement was unexpectedly fast, and Darren had less than a second to adjust before she twisted toward him, her arm outstretched to adapt. He matched her movement on instinct, stepping into her flow rather than resisting. Their hands met, and he felt the heat of her skin against his. Nara's eyes glowed faintly. Not bad. Darian focused, letting his muscles loosen, while his mind remained alert. He had no idea what the next move would be, but he wasn't about to fall behind. The rhythm of the room intensified. Naira pivoted her body, shifting into a new stance. Darren mirrored her, instantly rolling his shoulders. As their motions stayed in sync, it felt eerily similar to combat sparring. But instead of trying to outmaneuver each other, they had to move in harmony. The test was deceptively difficult. The pace quickened. Their steps became faster, their turn sharper. Naira pushed the tempo, deliberately shifting between movements with increasing speed, testing him. Darian didn't falter. He adapted. Step, spin, match. A sudden drop in movement. Darian nearly lost his footing, but he caught the change in time, shifting his weight at the last second. Nara's smirk widened. You're keeping up. Darian smirked back. Told you humans adapt for the first time. A flicker of genuine intrigue crossed her face. Then, without warning, she switched tactics entirely. Instead of keeping their distance, she closed the gap between them, her body pressing into his as she moved in perfect fluidity. Darren stiffened, not because he was caught off guard, but because the proximity sent a completely different kind of tension through him. Nara's face was close to his now, her breath warm against his skin. Still adapting, human Darren refused to let himself falter. He adjusted instantly, shifting into a more controlled stance, keeping their movements fluid even as she tested his focus in a whole new way. Nero's golden eyes watched him closely, as if measuring his reaction. Then, suddenly, she changed the rhythm again, a near impossible angle, forcing them to rotate in perfect unison. While still maintaining contact, Darian had two choices: fail or completely commit to the movement. So he committed. He twisted smoothly, pulling her with him, keeping their bodies aligned, their balance unbroken. The chamber pulsed with energy, then silenced. The rhythmic vibration stopped. Nara stilled. Her expression was unreadable. Then she took a step back, blinking. Once Duran raised an eyebrow, catching his breath. What? She tilted her head. You actually did it. Vanna, who had been silent up until now, finally stepped forward, her golden gaze sharp. You have completed the second trial. Darren exhaled. Great. What's next? Xana paused in studying him, then, after a long moment, she said something he absolutely did not expect. "You will now be tested against me." Nixar actually choked on air. Darien froze. "Wait, what?" Xana's eyes gleamed. "You have proven yourself capable of adapting to a partner, but now I must determine if a human can match a queen." Nixar coughed. "Your Majesty, are you sure?" Xana didn't even glance at her. Her focus remained entirely on Darien. "This is the final stage," she said smoothly. "You will either rise or you will fail." Darien felt his pulse spike. "Oh, underscore, underscore." Darien stood frozen, his brain short-circuit at Queen Xana's declaration. He had barely survived keeping up with Nara, and now he was supposed to sync with the queen herself, a woman who radiated dominance, precision, and an aura so commanding it made his survival instinct scream. Nixara, who had spent the last 10 minutes throwing him into impossible movement tests, was now the one looking at him with genuine concern. "Your Majesty, are you sure about this?" Xana did not look away from Darien. Her golden eyes locked onto him like a hunter sizing up prey. "You question my judgment." Naira coughed, waving a hand. No, of course not. I just wasn't expecting you to personally test him." Darien, who had been silent long enough for his brain to start functioning again, exhaled sharply. "All right, hold on. So now, instead of just matching some fast footwork game with Naira, I have to do it with you." Xana gave a slow, measured nod. "That is correct." He ran a hand through his hair, still catching his breath. "I have a feeling this isn't just about movement anymore." Naira muttered under her breath. "Oh, he's definitely catching on." The queen stepped forward, her regal attire flowing with every precise movement. "Your instincts serve you well, human. The first phase tested your ability to adapt to Zenithian terrain. The second phase tested your synchronization with a partner. But now we will see if you can match a queen." Darien exhaled through his nose. "Yeah, that sounds significantly worse." Nakara smirked, patting his shoulder. "Oh, it is, but don't worry, human. I believe in you." Sort of. Xana ignored the banter, stepping into the open arena with a single fluid motion. She reached behind her, unclasping a portion of her regal outer attire. The heavy ornamental layers slid from her shoulders, revealing a sleeker, more form-fitting battle uniform beneath, something designed for combat and movement. Darien immediately realized 3 very important things. Vanna was built like a warrior, tall, athletic, and powerful. Zenithian were already naturally stronger than humans, but she carried herself like someone who trained for perfection. She had zero hesitation about what was about to happen. This was no longer just a test. This was a challenge. The air in the chamber changed. The previous test had been difficult, but this was something different. Xana's golden eyes bore into him. The final trial is balance, control, and endurance. "You must not only match me, but you must withstand me." Darien's pulse spiked. "Oh." Naira muttered. "He's so screwed." Darien ignored her. His focus remained on the queen, every muscle in his body already preparing to react. Then she moved faster than anyone he had ever seen. 1 second she was standing still, the next she was a blur of motion. Darien's body acted before his brain did. He barely had time to adjust before she was already upon him, her movements fluid, controlled, and devastatingly precise. It was a dance, except there was no hesitation, no wasted motion. Her speed wasn't chaotic like Nara's. It was calculated. Every shift of her stance, every pivot of her frame, every subtle adjustment of her position. She was testing him with surgical precision, and Darien had to match her. He pivoted, mirroring her stance as they moved in perfect synchronization. Step, shift, adapt. Darien's muscles burned as he struggled to keep up. The queen never faltered, never slowed. Her golden eyes locked onto him like she was searching for the exact moment he would fail, but he didn't. He couldn't, so he did what humans did best. He pushed past his limits. Xana's expression remained unreadable, but something in her eyes changed interest. Darien caught it for just a second before she suddenly switched forms, a seamless transition into a movement that forced him into a tighter stance, a closer proximity. Darien barely adjusted in time. For the first time in the trial, he felt her breath against his skin. His chest nearly brushed hers as they pivoted, maintaining balance. Their movements had become too precise, too perfectly aligned, and the closeness sent a completely different kind of tension burning through him. Nick Sarah, watching from the sidelines, Whistled. Oh well, this just got interesting. Darien clenched his jaw, refusing to lose focus. Xana's gaze was sharp, intense. It was a look he had never seen before. The tempo increased, every motion, every shift they moved as one. Darren was matching her step, turn, shift. Perfect rhythm. His muscles screamed, his breath came faster, but he didn't break. And neither did she. Then it happened. Xana's breath hitched. It was small, barely noticeable, but Darren caught at her next movement, just slightly off, not enough to be seen as a mistake, but enough that he felt it. She was losing control for the first time in her life. She had to adjust to someone else. Darien barely had time to process that thought before they both spun to a final halt. A perfect close silence filled the chamber. The Queen's golden eyes locked onto him. Her expression was unreadable. Sarah, for once, said nothing. Darien was breathing hard, his heart hammered in his chest, but he didn't back down. Then Svana spoke. You kept up with me. It wasn't a statement of surprise, it was acknowledgement. Darien exhaled sharply. Told you humans adapt. The smallest curve of a smirk touched her lips for the first time. She looked intrigued. Then the words that changed everything. You are the first to ever match me. Nixer let out a low whistle. Oh, underscore. Darren, chest still heaving, blinked. Wait, what? Xana's gaze was different now. The composed, calculating mask had shifted, replaced with something more dangerous. I have tested countless warriors, she murmured. None have ever lasted against me. None have ever challenged me. Darren had a very bad feeling about where this was going. Salvana took a slow step forward, her golden gaze never leaving his. You interest me, human. Darren tensed. That's great, but I feel like I should be concerned by that. Nakara burst into laughter. Xana's eyes gleamed. I have made my decision. Darren had zero time to prepare for what she said next. You will become my consort. Nixer choked. Darren's brain exploded. Excuse me, what? Xana's lips curved slightly. You are a worthy match, and I do not wait opportunities. Darren felt his soul leave his body. Nakara, wheezing with laughter, clapped him on the back. Oh, this just keeps getting better. Darien groaned. I knew I should have walked out of this damn test. Darren's brain had completely shut down. He was still standing in the arena, still covered in sweat from the grilling synchronization test. And yet, the words Queen Svana had just spoken echoed in his skull like an explosion. You will become my consort. Nakara was still wheezing with laughter beside him, clutching her stomach like she had just witnessed the greatest joke in the universe. Oh, I love this. This is so much better than I expected. Darren, on the other hand, was struggling to process the situation. Hold on, what? Svana tilted her head slightly, her golden eyes locked onto him with the same unwavering confidence she had carried since their first meeting. You heard me, human. Darien threw up his hands. Yeah, I heard you. I just what the hell? Nixer cackled. Oh, this is great. You're panicking. I'm not panicking. Darren shot back. Then, realizing how panicked it sounded, he forced himself to inhale deeply. I just what does that even mean? Svana took a step closer. Her presence alone was enough to send a chill down his spine. It means exactly what I said. You have proven yourself a worthy partner. Darien blinked rapidly. Partner, as in you mean? Nexa grinned, leaning toward him as in congratulations, human. You just got claimed by the most powerful woman in the Empire. Darien felt his entire soul leave his body. He rubbed his face. Okay. I need clarification right now. Svana raised a single elegant brow. What do you wish to clarify? He gestured wildly. Everything. First of all, this was supposed to be a test, not some intergalactic marriage proposal. Nixer snorted. I mean, technically those aren't mutually exclusive. Darien ignored her. Secondly, what exactly do you mean by consort? Because that word carries a lot of implications where I come from. Svana did not blink. A consort by Zenithian tradition is the sole partner of the reigning queen. They serve as a trusted companion and equal in matters of strength and strategy. Darien sputtered. Okay, cool, that sounds a lot like a marriage proposal. Nixer grinned. Oh, it is. Darien let out a sound that was somewhere between a groan and a whimper. Xana studied his expression with a mixture of amusement and challenge. Are you refusing? He stared at her. I don't even know how to respond to this. I came here under the impression that I was doing some kind of weird, messed up physical fitness test, and now you're telling me I apparently just aced my way into royalty. Naira clapped him on the back. Welcome to interspecies diplomacy, human. Darien shot her a glare before turning back to Svanna. What if I say no? Her golden gaze did not waver. Then you will be free to leave. The trial was yours to accept, and you succeeded. You have the right to refuse your reward. Darien paused, that surprised him. He had expected some kind of ultimatum, some forceful decree that he was now stuck here forever, but instead, he actually had a choice. He exhaled. "Sue, telling me I can just walk away?" Svanna nodded. "Yes." Naira pouted. "But that would be so boring." Darien shot her another glare before looking back at Svanna. She was watching him closely now, studying his reaction, and that's when he realized she expected him to walk away. His gut twisted. This wasn't just a test of strength or adaptability. This was a test of will. She had ruled for years, likely surrounded by warriors and advisors who never challenged her, who followed orders without hesitation. And now, for the first time, she had met someone who had not only kept up with her, but had forced her to adjust to him. And she was willing to let him go, because if he didn't choose to stay, then he wasn't worthy in the first place. Darien ran a hand down his face. "God damn it." Nixer was watching him with interest. "Now too you're thinking about it, aren't you, Dar?" And groaned. "Number, maybe." "Shut up." Nixer grinned. "Admit a human you like the challenge." Darien turned back to Svanna. She hadn't moved. She was waiting. Darien's brain screamed at him to walk away, but his gut said otherwise, because despite the insanity of this entire situation, he wasn't sure he actually wanted to leave. Svanna finally spoke again, her voice measured, but with the smallest hint of something else beneath it. "If you choose to stay, you will not regret it." Darien exhaled sharply. Then finally he made his choice. He looked straight into her golden eyes and smirked. "All right, Queen, you win." Nakara let out a loud cheer. "Yes, oh, this is going to be amazing." Xana's lips curved into a slow, knowing smirk, and just like that, Darien's entire life changed forever. Darien sat in stunned silence as the reality of his decision sank in. He had just accepted the Queen's offer, accepted his place as her consort. Nixer was still grinning, ear practically bouncing with excitement. "Oh, this is going to be so much fun." Darien rubbed his temples. "I feel like I've made a terrible mistake." Svanna, still standing before him, watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Do you regret your choice already?" Human. Darien exhaled, leaning back. "Number, just trying to figure out how my life went from wandering space mercenary to consort of an alien queen in under an hour." Naira snickered. "Oh, trust me, it happens faster than you'd think." Darien shot her a look. "Has this happened before?" She grinned. "Nope, that's what makes it so hilarious." Svanna ignored her, stepping closer to Darien. "Now that you have accepted, there are formalities to observe." Darien sighed. "Of course there are." Svanna studied him carefully. "There is still one final confirmation to be made." Darien frowned. "Final confirmation?" Naira chuckled. "Oh, this part is going to be good." Svanna lifted her chin slightly. "By Zenithian law, a queen may only take a consort who is compatible in all aspects. You have proven yourself physically and mentally, but there remains one last test, one that cannot be faked." Darien stiffened. "I feel like I'm not going to like where this is going." Svanna stepped even closer, her presence commanding yet not forceful. Then, to his absolute shock, she leaned in and whispered against his ear, "You must prove your desire." Darien's brain completely short-circuited. Nixer let out a loud laugh. "Oh, he's panicking." Darien immediately took a step back, his hands up. Whoa, hold on, what does that mean?" Svanna smirked, her golden eyes flashing with something dangerous. "It is simple. The final test is whether you truly desire this position." Darien blinked rapidly, trying to form a coherent response. What?" Nixer slapped a hand over her mouth. "Absolutely losing it." Darien glared at her. "You are enjoying this way too much." Nixer giggled. "Oh, you have no idea." Xana's gaze remained steady. "This is not a matter of humor. A consort must be more than physically strong. They must have the will to stand beside their queen, not just in battle but in bond." Darien groaned. "Okay, but how exactly am I supposed to prove that?" Nixer grinned. "By showing the queen that you're not afraid." Darien exhaled sharply. "Not afraid of what?" Nakara leaned in of her. Darien's pulse spiked. He turned back to Svanna. She was still standing tall, composed, regal, but now there was something undeniably expectant in her expression, like she was waiting, testing him. Darien cursed internally. He had spent Years fighting his way across the galaxy, facing down mercenaries, assassins, and warlords. But this was new territory. He had a very strong suspicion that if he showed even the slightest hesitation, now she would walk away and take the offer with her. It was now or never. He inhaled deeply, locking eyes with Harol. Right, Nixer perked up. Darren steeled himself, then closed the distance between them. Zvana didn't move as he stepped into her space, standing just inches away. His heart was pounding. But he didn't look away, didn't waver. Instead, he smirked. I think I can handle you, Your Majesty. For the first time, the Queen looked surprised just for a split second. Then, to his absolute shock, Zvana smirked back. The test was over. Nixer, with laughter. Oh, I like this human. Darren exhaled sharply, trying to ignore the heat in his face. Yeah, laugh it up. Zvana turned away smoothly. It is decided. The Zenithian court shall be informed. Darren blinked. Wait, just like that? Nixer grinned. What did you expect? A wedding ceremony right now? Darren groaned. I hate everything about this. Nixer patted his shoulder. Oh, trust me, human, you're going to love being part of the royal court. Darren had a very bad feeling about that, and somehow he knew this was just the beginning. Darren stood in the center of the Zenithian throne room, his body tense, as Queen Zvana turned away from him, her regal posture never wavering. The decision had been made. He had passed every trial. He had proven himself physically, mentally, and according to Zenithian customs, even emotionally. And now he was about to be introduced to an empire as the Queen's consort. What the hell had he just gotten himself into? Nixer, standing beside him, was barely containing her laughter. She nudged him playfully. Well, human, you're officially royal property now. Darren groaned. Yeah, thanks, that's exactly how I wanted to think about it. Zanana turned slightly, arching a brow at him. Do you regret your decision already? Darren exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Not regretting, just trying to figure out how I went from passing through this system to being the consort of an alien queen in the span of a few hours. Nara grinned. Oh, you'll get used to it. Darren shot her a flat look while Zvana stepped toward him, her golden eyes gleaming under the chamber's ethereal lighting. You will find that being by my side is not a burden, but an honor. Darren sighed. I don't doubt that, Your Majesty, it's just a lot. Xana's lips curved slightly. Then you will adapt. That is, after all, your species' greatest strength. Darren rolled his shoulders, smirking slightly despite himself. Fair enough. A deep resonating chime rang through the chamber, and suddenly the massive golden doors at the far end of the throne room began to open. Darren's stomach dropped. He immediately knew what was happening. Nixer beamed. Oh, it's time. This is my favorite part. Darren glared at her. What part? Zvana turned to face the doors, her tone calm and commanding. The court awaits. Darren stiffened. Wait, hold on. What? Nixer giggled. Oh, you thought you were going to get some downtime before being announced to the entire Zenithian nobility. No, human, you're about to be put on display. Darren groaned. I hate everything about this. But it was too late. The throne room filled with light as the golden doors fully swung open, revealing an enormous audience chamber beyond. Rows upon rows of Zenithian nobles, warriors, and high-ranking officials stood at attention, their sharp alien features watching with curiosity, amusement, or outright disbelief. Darren felt every single one of their gazes land on him. Nexera patted his back. Breathe, human, yuk. He fine. Darren muttered. You're enjoying this way too much. She grinned. Oh, absolutely. At the front of the assembled court, an elderly Zenithian minister stepped forward, his deep violet robes shimmering as he held up a ceremonial staff. The court recognizes Her Majesty Queen's ruler of the Zenithian Empire. The crowd bowed their heads in perfect synchrony. Darren felt massively out of place. Then the minister's sharp golden eyes turned to him. And before us stands the chosen Khans. Sword of Her Majesty, a human warrior having completed the sacred trials and proven his worth before the Queen herself. Darren felt every eye in the chamber lock onto him. A heavy silence stretched. Then the murmuring began. A wave of hushed voices spread through the nobles. Some looked stunned, others curious, and a few looked outright offended. Darren leaned toward Nakara. I feel like this isn't a great reaction. Naira whispered back, grinning. Oh no, this is fantastic. They're panicking because the Queen did something no Zenithian ruler has ever done. Darren's stomach twisted, which is Nyara smirked. She picked a human. Darren winced. Yeah. I was afraid of that. The murmuring only grew louder. Some of the nobles visibly agitated. Finally, one of them, a tall, broad-shouldered Zenithian male dressed in warrior's regalia, stepped forward. This is unprecedented, he announced, his voice booming. No non-Zenithian has ever stood as consort to a queen. This is unacceptable. Darren's muscles tensed. Oh great, here we go. Zana turned her head slightly, her golden eyes cold. Do you question my decision, High Commander Varric? The warrior straightened. I question the wisdom of introducing a weaker species into our royal bloodline. Darren's eye twitched. Nixer leaned toward him, whispering, do not punch him. Darren muttered back, I wasn't going to. Nyara smirked. You were thinking about it. Svana took a single step forward, and the entire chamber fell into silence. Her voice was quiet, but it carried an undeniable force. Commander Varric, the warrior bowed slightly, but his expression remained rigid. Salvana golden gaze pierced through him. You say this human is weak? Varric hesitated. His species is not known for their power. They are not like us. Svana smirked. You are correct. They are not like us. The commander looked triumphant for a second, then the queen's expression darkened. They are stronger. A ripple of shock went through the nobles. Varric stiffened. Your Majesty. Svana cut him off. Tell me, Commander, were you able to match me in combat? These jaw tightened. No, Your Majesty. Svana tilted her head, and yet this human did. The silence was deafening. Darren saw the way the nobles shifted uneasily, some casting him new, calculating looks. Zana's gaze swept across the chamber. This human has proven himself in ways no other has. He has earned his place at my side, not because of his species, but because of his strength. Her golden eyes locked onto Darren, and then in front of the entire court, she did something no one expected. She extended her hand to him. Breath caught. This was a declaration, a statement to the entire